Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
And Stephen Park. And this week has been pretty fun for me. I don't know, how's it been for you?
This week has been very interesting. I feel as though I've been not sleeping well, but because I've also been doing things that are very important to me, I think. I would say I'm chugging along with my program, and I think that's the biggest thing. With the program, I finally started working on a project, the first project of many, and although it awakened my creative side, it also awakened my perfectionist side. It brought me back to grade school and college and all that, and remembering me turning over the paper and whiting out the backside as well. It reminded me of having the lines perfectly straight. It reminded me of taking over the entire group project, even though there were 5 of us, and doing all the work myself. So, although I feel accomplished because I already submitted the project, whoop, whoop, it also has drained me.
How many times did you submit the project?
Truthfully, I submitted it twice, which I probably shouldn't have, but as a former teacher, I hold to this belief that the classroom and learning spaces are where you should make your mistakes. So, students out there, whether you're in university or high school or middle school, wherever you're at and you're still learning, the learning space is where you should make your mistakes. So, even though I made a mistake and submitted it twice, I'm okay. I'm feeling good. How's the week been for you, Steven?
I feel like it's been long. There's been a lot going on, just little things. Yeah, chugging along. We caught a show this week.
Yes.
It was by Ronald K. Brown. It was really cool. It highlighted a lot of, I don't know, the program wrote African dances, but also it showed that he had some influences from Latin America and South America.
Totally.
So I thought it was really cool. It was chill. The other thing is I followed up with the show that we watched last time, so from scratch, and I've started listening to the audiobook, which apparently won an audiobook award, which was really great.
Nice.
The author, who's named Tembe Locke, is something I wanted to mention because I felt bad that I didn't know her name last time. But yeah, if you do want to get into it, I would highly recommend reading or watching the show first and then reading the book. I felt like she kind of puts footnotes to a lot of the stuff she has in the show.
Definitely.
And the show does a great job of taking different highlights from the book and then carrying it over. So by the time you're listening to the book or reading the book, there was a moment where I started tearing up because it made me think of the movie, which obviously as a memoir is a real life story. So yeah, super cool. But along with that, today I've been recently also starting out counseling, which therapy is something that pretty within Asian American cultures, especially first generation cultures, pretty low on the totem pole of things that we are fed that we should do by our parents. So it's something that we started looking into more by ourselves.
So to clarify, are you saying that our parents suggested us seeing?
No, they don't really suggest it. I mean, I love my parents and they do a great job, but I went to the doctors probably a total of 5 times in my life, and this is everything doctors, including stitches. I mean, probably a little bit more than that, but I can almost remember every incident that I went to the doctors for. But then on top of that, then to go into therapy, it was not something that really was even highlighted within our lives. But I think it's something I've been diving into more, and it's been both enlightening and heavy and dark, but very, very bright in the moments that do shine. So it's been awesome and scary, and a lot of good things and bad things at the same time. But I don't know, it'd be great if more people really, it was destigmatized. And I mean, honestly, I try to do more of a job of talking about it on a daily basis. I don't know how much other people do, but nowadays if I'm talking with friends, I bring up the fact that I'm in therapy.
Nice.
Today I brought up the fact that I had therapy today. It was emotional. It was draining. Tears came out. And I feel like just being able to share that information, that it's a normal part of your day instead of this thing that's very cryptic and unknown is, I don't know. That's my goal, is to make it more normalized.
Absolutely. To jump off from what you're saying, I think in both Asian and Asian American households, it's not very encouraged to seek a therapist. And usually when they think of mental health, and I'm thinking about my parents and about being first generation Asian American, or at least growing up in a third culture, I remember it being, if a doctor told you that you had a mental health issue, then that's bad. You're going to be shunned by everybody, or they're going to tell you, oh, you're okay, just smile more, just be happy, think of the good things, you're going to get through it.
There is a third option in our cultures. Just give it up to Jesus.
Oh, that is.
But like, it is okay. Like, as a joke, yes, it's a lot, but there is a certain thing of like church providing mental health services if you go to a great church, right? But also there are, to kind of go along with this is like, there are much better outlets and resources than just hoping and praying.
Right.
There are actual things that we could do. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries. No, that's totally valid, and that's also a part of my family as well. Like, oh, you're not depressed, you're just sad. Make Jesus take it away. And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, that wasn't the answer I needed. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was a teenager feeling all the feelings and having these hormones course through my body. That was not the answer. I should have had better care, but again, like Steven mentioned, our parents did the best that they could with the resources that they had.
Yeah, and they did a great job. I mean, it's not, therapy doesn't necessarily mean that something went wrong.
No.
It's just exploration. Like, no matter how great of a job your parents can possibly do, they're still humans. They can't be with you 24 hours a day.
Oh, yeah.
So your experiences are going to be unique to you, and how you grow and how you evolve from them are going to change you to the person that you are. And to get help with that, or even if, I don't know, I'm honestly going to this with the knowledge of, I know I need help. I don't know where that help is. And that's where a lot of this digging stuff up has been really rough is, I'm finding things that I just didn't even realize about myself. And like I said, it's been good, just scary.
Totally.
Yeah.
And like, therapy also is not a magic silver bullet.
No.
It's not going to magically remove all your fears and all your anxieties and all your mental illnesses. But it is a helpful way to understand, like you're saying, to dig in and find those little things that you didn't know about yourself, or to help you figure out how to express yourself or be more connected to the world.
And I think the other part is that if you go to a therapist once, it doesn't mean that's your only opportunity.
No.
Like, I went to a therapist during the pandemic because of work stress, and it was something that our work had recommended. So I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Like, the question of like, oh, what are you here for? I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I was just supposed to do this because I've been stressed out.
Yeah.
And just my conversations with her were very blank, were very surface level, and we didn't really get much accomplished. Like, not saying anything about that therapist, but it was just something that didn't feel like I got much out of. So I only had a couple of sessions with her, and we were like, okay, yeah, like, seems good enough. But then with the current therapist I'm with now, he's also Korean American. I feel like I can open up to him more. I feel like I could share struggles that he's also had. Obviously, we live completely different lives. We didn't even grow up in the same state, but it's kind of given me more of an opportunity to talk freely. And I think that's very important, especially for people that have backgrounds that are diverse and their cultures mean so much more to them, which we'll get into with this book of what cultures mean. But yeah, I know that struggle for me was really heavy. Yeah,
for sure.
But okay, so let's kind of go into our recommendation of the week.
This week's recommendation is Coco Kind. That's COCOKIND. It's an eco-conscious skincare brand founded and led by Priscilla Tsai. It's AAPI owned, and it's known for their transparency and their connection to their customers. What I love is that they constantly connect with people who reach out. Their giveaways are very much targeted to those who also connect with the representatives, and the representatives listen to what the customers want or need. So if the customers like a certain shade of red more than another, they will focus on catering to that formula. And not only are they conscientious about the formula itself, which they have detailed on their boxes, but they also make sure that their containers come in materials that can be either reused or recycled. So not only is it good for your body, but it's good for the planet. So if you want to support skincare, support an AAPI-owned business that focuses on giving back to their customers, Coco Kind is your skincare company to look up.
Use coupon code. I'm just kidding. We don't have a coupon code.
We do not have a coupon code.
But that's your recommendation for the week.
So that brings us to our first book club pick, I Was Their American Dream by Malaka Gharib. Last time, in the previous episode, we read chapters 1 through 4, where it started with Malaka's parents' respective immigration stories coming to the United States, then talking about her childhood, and then ending at her high school years.
Which were in Cerritos.
Yes.
At Cerritos High School.
Specifically.
To recap, which is where I'm from.
Yes.
Shout out to the Dons.
Wow.
Which are the mascot. Yes, it's very embarrassing. How did you like the pacing? I felt like, for myself, this book was everything that, or the second half of this book was everything that I was hoping for. Because in that first half, in the last podcast, I thought it was a little bit slow. I was worried about where this book was going to go, because it felt like we spent a lot of time on that growing up process, which was just crazy that we cut this in half. And then almost immediately in that 5th chapter...
Right, it just speeds up.
Speeds up. She's in college now, and it's like, she is a woman, hear me roar. She's going to places, she's doing things, she's meeting people way outside of her boundaries.
True.
What did you think about the pacing?
I feel the same. I felt like the pacing was so quick at the end that by the ending, it didn't feel like it was really over. But we'll talk about the ending more later. But yes, you make a really good point that by the second half, there isn't really much of a timeline anymore. It's, this is her life in college, this is her life as a woman, and then now this is the end. But it's kind of like the way we grow up, right? A lot of the timelines that we have starting earlier on, like kindergarten, then elementary, then middle school, they're very much big life stages that happens because you expect them. But then once you become an adult, those milestones become fickle. You don't always get married, but the time that people get married are at different times. You don't always graduate. Sometimes you don't even go to college or university. So those are more fluid. So I think that's why, like you said, all these different life stages and life happenings made it go super fast.
Yes. And speaking of college and life events, one of the first things that she goes into is that job, right? Like the
job hierarchy.
Yes, which we talked a little bit about last time, and it's really funny that she even includes this in the book. Because for people that don't grow up in this culture, or like in the expectations era of what our parents have, they may not understand this, but this is almost a direct outline of like, these are good things. These are where you are. I think for me, this played, like most recently, it played a huge part in trying to figure out our life, right? Like with the COVID era of, okay, we don't know where our careers are going. I understood my parents a little bit better of being like, be a doctor, be someone that we see that has a job that's steady, because of the comfort of having that constant, that salary, knowing that the jobs are going to always be available, because people are always going to be available. So I get this hierarchy. I don't think it's the only thing we should follow, but
No.
oh my gosh, this was like exactly what I grew up having to look at.
Yes, and for those who are following along on your physical book, it's on page 87. And yes, doctor is the number one job on the hierarchy. So, like we said in the last episode, the service front facing industry is what our parents want us to be. And the second tier nurse is what my mom wanted me to be, because that's who she is. That's the job that she had for the longest time. And even though I started off university as a nursing major, I just knew in my heart of hearts that wasn't for me. And usually it's not the path that we would have chosen for ourselves. Like, these jobs in this job hierarchy isn't usually the path we would have chosen for ourselves, but that's why you have dancing nurses. That's why you have comedic doctors or lawyers that have side gigs, because that's what they wanted to do, but they also wanted to fulfill their parents.
Which is why we have Ken Jeong, a doctor who is now an actor. Which is why we have YouTubers who are doctors. There's a stand-up comedian on Netflix who's a doctor. Like, it's
absolutely
something that we pursued, but obviously we have different creativities and passions.
Absolutely.
I thought it was hilarious that when she did go to college, do you remember what major she was signed up for?
I don't remember specifically, but I think you do.
So she signed up for marketing.
That's right.
She was like, as my second major, because I'm not going to let my mom know, I'm going to do journalism. And it's like the slightest of things that it means so much to her to go into that journal. I'm assuming it meant so much to her to go into that journalism double major.
Right.
Because it was probably what she wanted to do.
Exactly.
It wasn't the thing that was going to bring in money, which is what her parents really want. But it was the thing that she wanted to do.
Yeah, definitely. And like looking at her career now, being in journalism,
Right.
and not only journalism, but graphic journalism, like drawing things out for different
NPR.
yes,
I think.
exactly. For different publications. It's like, wow, not only was she able to do what she dreamed of doing, but is successful doing that.
Yeah. And then kind of going from there, following her path out of high school into that college route, it was then highlighted of her experience with meeting white people and white culture, which for me, and I think for you, Jamae,
Yes.
it's so relevant to our experience.
Absolutely.
So how was your experience with getting out of the areas that you were familiar with in Guam, and then I think Portland is where you first experienced this kind of culture, right?
Yes, like very white, very they're very privileged, yes. Yes, absolutely. So what was it like for me to encounter? I feel like it ties back to the part where Malaka talks about all the microaggressions and the microaggression bingo. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I could get a bingo out of this little square. So definitely I was overlooked often. I felt very invisible. And when I wasn't invisible, being in white spaces where I'm noticed because I'm fetishized. Especially as a femme or woman presenting person, it's like that was my experience. And a lot of mostly negative, and if it was positive, it was positive for the wrong reasons. Yeah,
I fully think that's valid. I thought one of the things that she wrote was eventually she kind of got to the point where she's like, I am defining who I am. And she wrote, this is my pledge to be the real me. And then 3 things that she wrote on there were just so valuable. And for you, I would assume that the first one, which is make people pronounce my name correctly,
absolutely,
was a big one. Because I remember when we first started talking, even going to, I forget where we were, but it was a restaurant or it was a place where we had to order something and give a name. And then you said Anne.
Yes.
Which is your first name, but the second half of your first name.
Yes.
But it's not a name that you go by often.
No.
Definitely not just Ann. If anything, it's Jamae Ann.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of shook. I thought, like, what is going on? Like, who is Ann? And I thought, because, you know, there are those people that, like, have harder names, and they'll just say, like, my name is Betsy, or I don't know, like, just they'll come up with, like, a very Anglo name that's easy to pronounce.
Right.
I mean, either way, Starbucks is going to get your name wrong. It doesn't matter what name you give them.
Yeah.
But definitely Jamae came back as, like, James, Jane,
Jamie,
like,
and even just saying, so many times I've said just put May as in the month.
mm-hmm.
And this has happened in multiple branches of Starbucks, not just one and not just the same one either.
Mm-hmm.
But they would spell my name Ming, M-I-N-G.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, May and Ming sound totally different. You saw my mouth moving. You heard me speaking. And there's not a lot of people in these branches that I was in. And I'm like, what the F?
To be honest, Starbucks is never the epitome of spelling names correctly, but that's pretty bad. Like, okay, this is side topic, but I used to work at a place where we had a guy named Pablo, and his name was Pablo, but he was the only, this is in Portland, Chinook territory, but his name was Pablo, and we at the front desk, the people that were there, every time they got a phone call for Pablo, they would record the names that he got because they were just so ridiculous. So I think he got like Jose, Juan.
No.
Oh, I don't know. Just like the most stereotypical. And it was like, this dude was like not that. Like, it was not even close.
That's terrible.
I know. So make people pronounce my name correctly, especially when it's something like Malaka, which is, you can make it sound like saying the Monica with the L, I think makes it much easier. But not a lot of people, like, I haven't heard the name Malaka. It's a beautiful name, but I haven't heard of that name. So to try to get everyone to say that name, I think is so valid. It's so important.
Absolutely.
It helps you stand your ground, and I think that was really beautiful.
Totally.
The second part of don't hide the slight Tagalog accent, I love it.
Yes.
We watched the show The Circle, and then I can't remember his name, the really buff dude, the really big guy.
I can't remember his name either.
I can't remember, but he's Nigerian. He's extremely intelligent, but also just like the buffest guy you'll ever see. Just ridiculously handsome, but seems ridiculously sweet. But he has a very strong Nigerian accent, and I think it's so beautiful. I remember growing up, people would be like, "What's your favorite accent?" And most people answered like British, Australian, like the standards, right?
It's very white Eurocentric.
Yeah, because that's what we grew up with. Like now, I think the Nigerian accent is so beautiful. I think some Asian accents are really beautiful as well. Like I think having that diversity of speech not only just shows you like you have now learned a second language and have overcome the barrier of trying to be comfortable speaking that language in public, which is huge.
Right.
But you've also taken up the fact that like this is a part of who I am.
Right, and I'm not going to try to make it sound different.
Which I think is just awesome. And then to stop pretending I like the sandwiches for lunch. For me, it wasn't as bad of a deal. But for a lot of people that I know, bringing in lunch to school, I mean, even in a school like Cerritos, which was diversely Asian, we still wanted the Lunchables. We still wanted the extremely white foods. And I still remember asking my mom for those foods. But I think that's what hit me with that one is stop pretending I like sandwiches. I love sandwiches. My mom we used to own a sandwich shop, and she's the best sandwich maker in the world. But for me, it was the stop pretending that I like what other people like.
Yeah.
Which I thought kind of led into the hot dogs and bad rice. Do you remember that scene?
Yes. In university where the closest thing to white fluffy rice and Spam was this mushy brown rice and hot dogs at their cafeteria.
Which, if you don't have a great rice maker, get a great rice maker. It changes the world. But the Spam and rice thing for me was then building on top of the fact, don't pretend I like sandwiches. Like, it's who I am. This is what I like. This is what I'm going to eat. Being in different houses with people of different cultures, which was honestly, it was not even different cultures. People who were white, it definitely made me have to be more conscious of simple things like how much garlic am I using? I would just be very careful to not cook when they were around, so that because I didn't want them to feel bad either, and I didn't want them to have to approach me, which is a little of that, like, I'm shying away from myself to make you feel comfortable, which is something I'm open to, but it definitely isn't the free feeling of this is my food, this is my culture. Let me put 5 times the amount of garlic in at the very minimum kind of cooking.
Yeah.
But I really liked those parts of what she had said.
Totally. And it reminds me of the scene where she had rice and fish and the people around her was like, oh, it smells bad. And I'm like, that brings me back to my experiences, like loving fish and then having people react, ooh, what's that smell? And being like, well, I love this food, but I don't want people to view me badly. And so I don't want this smell, so I'm going to ask my family to stop cooking it and cook me other foods that smell better, and I'm quote unquote with smelling better.
Which was always worse. Like, my mom would always try to make us spaghetti, which was good enough, but it wasn't great spaghetti. It was boxed spaghetti, it was ragu sauce, and then she would put in things that try to make it better, but it was never like a better product.
Right.
But it was always better than the humiliation or the fact of going in the next day. Yeah, and just saying, like, I had spaghetti, and that being a point of pride, and like carry it on your shoulders that you had an American food thing for dinner or lunch or whatever it was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What other portions or scenes stuck out to you in this second half?
I think in the second half, one of the scenes that did stick out to me was also the karaoke. So her going along with her introduction to white people. And the funny thing was, with the karaoke, she mentioned 2 songs. One was Brown Eyed Girl, and the other one was Sweet Caroline. Now, for a lot of listeners that haven't really followed where I've been, where I've gone to school and stuff, I went to my grad school in Boston, and in the stadium for the Boston Red Sox, in the 7th inning stretch, they always play Sweet Caroline. Every single game.
Wow.
So going there for the first time, and we're so close to the stadium, when we pass by, we can hear everything. And so they would blast this song every single game, and everybody's singing. There's not one person that's not singing it. And I had no idea what it was. Like, when I first got there, genuinely, I was like, I don't know who Neil Diamond is. I don't know, like, anything here. But now, being a person that is shy and only likes to go to Asian karaoke, like karaoke rooms, if I do have to go to like American karaoke and have to sing in front of people, that's my go-to song. Reason why is everyone else will sing. No one else is going to hear me sing because everyone else is shouting. So I now use that to my advantage.
Nice.
But I felt like that hit so hard that is the song that American white people apparently love.
I still don't know that song. I know the song title. I've heard the name of the singer. Still don't know the song.
The sheep part?
Nope.
The ba-ba-ba?
Nope.
All right.
No, nothing.
All right. Well, what stuck out to you then? What was the most sticking point?
The scenes that stuck out to me were when Malaka revisited the "What are you?" question in a way to connect with other people of color, which is how I felt once I came to Portland. Once I saw another person of color enter the room, I immediately wanted to connect with them. I wanted to talk to them. I wanted to just hang out with them and nobody else. And also wanted to ask what their ethnicity is. I know growing up, what are you wasn't my question. It was, where is your family from? Especially for immigrants, talking about where their parents or their parents' parents came from. And like she says, it's a way of understanding another person's culture and understanding where they're coming from, both physically and figuratively speaking. Now, if you follow Malaka on Instagram, she does bring up a better question to ask instead of what are you or where are you from, because those are very polarizing questions. Instead, a question that she offers now is, how do you identify? And again, that can be an open door to many different interpretations, but it does offer that interpretation to the receiver rather than to the speaker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a big hitting point for me too. There was a second part of that where she goes and asks, I think she asks her friends or something who are
Yes.
people of color.
Yes.
Or at least that's what the graphics look like. And one of the ones that someone wrote down was, it all depends on the timing, topic of conversation, and tone.
Yes.
For me, the thing that popped into my head was that the question of what are you has both a good and a bad. And especially being in a place that you don't see a lot of people that look like you, the good is exactly that. Like I love sharing experiences with people that look like me, that share my culture, that understand where I'm coming from, have a similar background. But the bad is the judging, the implying otherness, which is what someone else said. And then one of the big things that she wrote is the hateful words of "I don't see color," which it's just so huge. Well, it's because you don't see me. If you don't see color, you don't see me.
Right.
It's not saying that you're not racist. It means you're maybe even more racist because you don't choose to see me as the person with my background.
Right, exactly. You erase culture, you erase history, you erase the person. Absolutely.
And I think that was probably one of the biggest things to kind of definitely shine out in this book.
Yeah, totally. And towards the end, her focus starts to shift to the person she ends up marrying. And that is another big point for me. How the relationship and how the expectations on the relationship formed the way she viewed why she was in relationship with this person.
One of the cool things that ended up happening by splitting this book in half is that kind of early on, I wrote page 93, but she talks about the differences that she noticed with what white people don't do, which is like take off the shoes, they don't eat rice, they make you pay for meals. And then the karaoke part comes up in this, going to the gym. In the end, she kind of talks about, what's his name? Daniel, right?
Her husband?
Yeah.
Darren, there you go,
Darren. Then she goes on to talk about Darren and how he is working to embrace the culture.
Yes.
Which I think that's such a big part. Like just that the difference between how she started chapter 5 of where she saw this new, not species of people, but this new
experience with people who had different experiences.
Right, and then she has an experience with someone like that from Tennessee.
Yes.
And is working and growing this relationship with him.
Right, and how I appreciate how she also includes like a comparison, how their families had similar values, like religion was important, that they were very generous in their giving. And for those who are following along in your physical book, it's on page 132, where she sees the way that growing up and being raised similarly, even though they had totally different experiences from totally different parts of the world.
One part that I feel was a little bit hard was the parties. Like when she talked about the parties and like, I want to travel to California for Nana's birthday.
Yeah.
I want to travel for this. I want these people to stay with us for 3 weeks.
Right.
I do think that is the big dissonance in culture.
Yes.
Because like we went to your sister's graduation.
Oh, yeah.
Which was such a big deal because you were like, this is my family's gathering. This is what we have to do. As we were there, it was kind of in a break of the pandemic. So things weren't terrible, but obviously still not great.
Right.
So we were trying to be mindful of seeing too many people. But within a lot of Filipino families, the ideas of parties is such a big part of who you are as someone who's Filipino. So your mom led us to a party to go to, which at that moment there was some frustration of just, we want to be safe.
Right.
But at that point there was no argument because I think, especially from my point, I knew what this meant to your mom.
Right.
And how big it was. So
Absolutely.
I think that is the hard part of coming from an Asian background versus coming from a background where that emphasis on family isn't quite as strong.
Right, absolutely. And Yeah, absolutely. With the parties, and the core part of the parties is because of family, because of that collectivism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people of color's background has, that core family value, and not just nuclear family, but it goes into extended family as well.
Extended families, neighbors,
Right,
church.
exactly.
It's a big, broad aspect of who you let into your lives.
Right.
It's the village raising the family, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's another part that not to get too hard on Darren, but one of the things I did love to see was how much he did embrace a lot of these things, though. One of the cool things was I'm going to say this wrong, the Christmas star.
Pearl.
The parole, and we just got a parole for the first time.
Yes.
Shout out to Jamae's family for getting it for us. But things like that are such a big part of what makes me as an Asian American, especially the Asian part of me. This stuff I love to keep and I love to grow.
Absolutely.
Rather than having it disappear from me. So
Yeah.
I love that he embraced that he was so willing to jump into the food, understand what tamarind is.
Yes.
I think that is so important in sharing that future love that they're going to continue to build.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of brings us to the end of the book. How did you feel about the ending?
It was good. I mean, it was a little fast, especially just there was not a whole lot of mention of her dad.
Right.
So that part was a
Totally.
little fast. I really like the way that this book went through her life, and like I said,
Yes.
it was everything that I think it was hoping it to be.
Yeah,
How about for you?
absolutely. Absolutely. It definitely fulfilled all of my expectations, but similarly, the ending, although it was really beautiful and closing out how her relationship with her family, as well as this blooming relationship with Darren, started to come together very well and bring them into the future. But yes, I feel like the pacing was so fast that it was like driving off a cliff. That there wasn't enough slowing down for me to feel like there was an ending. And it could have been intentional to make us want to know more about her life. I don't know if that was her purpose, but I mean, I'm following her on Instagram, so
But also, her story is not fully written.
true, very true.
There's so much more that's gonna happen to her. So
Absolutely.
I think that might be the hard part with an ending is there's not really an ending. This is an ongoing memoir for her.
True. And
Yeah.
she has many life chapters ahead.
Yeah. Hopefully many books.
Yes! She does have another book, y'all. If you don't remember, It Won't Always Be Like This, and it's newly released. So, if you liked I Was Their American Dream, I think you're gonna like her next book as well. And I feel like a lot of people... To be honest, I haven't read it yet. I do have it, but I'm pretty sure if we like this book, we're gonna like the next book.
Episode 60-something of Asian Book Club. But it kind of leads us to our next book, right? So kind of going into what's going to get us there, we're going to give you a couple of hints in the Hint of Jam.
First, the author's first book in 2014 won Amazon Book of the Year award. 2. It is a fiction book that has a slow burn.
Oh, and
3. It's not only a book, but it was also made into a Hulu series.
Awesome. So follow along with us. We'll introduce what the book is next time. We'll kind of predict where things go. To be honest, we've already seen the TV series.
And I've also read the book, so it's a reread for me.
But it's a new read for me.
Yes.
So I'm excited. We'll
Absolutely.
see where things go. And yeah. But if anyone wants to get in contact with us, where can they find us?
You can email us your feedback. You can email us your thoughts at asianbookclubpod, P-O-D, @gmail.com.
What about suggestions for what we should read?
You can also send it to our email, or you can reach us on Instagram at asianbookclubpod, P-O-D.
Yep. And we also have a bookstore. It's bookshop.org/shop, SHOP/Asian Book Club Pod. And Twitter?
No Twitter.
No Twitter.
We don't do Twitter.
Awesome.
Bye.